Oh, excuse me. You gotta excuse me, my dears. Oh, it did tickle me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. We've got to start, haven't we? We've just got to start. You know, we're going to have a chat about this Caribbean tour that's just been had, which is such a riot and the fascination of colour and culture with our beloved friends in the Caribbean. I'd love to hear from you, by the way, if you're in Belize, Jamaica, any of these countries. Could you please leave some comments below letting me know if you managed to see Catherine and William while they were on tour, how the atmosphere was. Any reports below would be very welcome from you. But we've got to start. Those hips don't lie, do they, Big Willie? They don't lie. And old white gal in the ring. You're going to have to excuse me. I mean, you can't help but fall in love with them, can you, and be charmed. Whether or not you found it cringeworthy or not, I did slightly cringe a little bit, I do admit, but I also found it enormously endearing. I just love those two so very much. You've got to see the funny side. Clutching the skirt. Oh, yeah, go William. Oh, he really gets into it, doesn't he? Such a good sport. This is the bit I love. Catherine sort of trotting and swaying. Go on, grind your body down, girl. Wind it down. Oh, bless her. You know, she is royal and regal, isn't she? She's to be future queen. She might not be queen of Jamaica, if there's some of those in Jamaica have their way, but she is to be our future queen. And so she can't get down, can she, my dear? White gal in the ring, she can't get down like white gal Yardi. But bless our Katie, because she really tried to get into the spirit of it, didn't she? And she did! But seeing her so demure there, doing her little trotting on the spot, you know, so endearing. It was a really interesting week, and I enjoyed hearing the developments and reactions and watching it all from both sides, those who are pro-monarch as a head of state and those who aren't. And I enjoyed hearing the different opinions from my own family, much of whom are West Indian, black Jamaicans and also St. Lucians. So hearing those differences of opinion within my own family was very interesting to me, and I like the variety of opinion. I have my own thoughts on that, but we'll discuss that later, because let's face it, the most important thing of the whole trip was Catherine's wardrobe. And, wow, what a queen. You know, what a superstar that girl is. She goes from strength to strength. She truly does. Oh, I just want to mention before we get into Catherine's wardrobe that the Queen was seen wearing her spring florals. So reassuring to see her, isn't it? Because so much talk lately is about her frailty, which we can't deny. But it's just so reassuring when we see that spark and that pizzazz that she still possesses in spades. She's relaxed and she's poised and she's smiling. We saw her viewing enamel and fine bone china artifacts this week, and she looks lovely, so I just thought I'd throw that in there. But yeah, let's just have a mini review of Catherine's wardrobe, and I'm gonna start with my favourite number, which was the green dress that she wore to one of the formal occasions there. Wow, I was so enchanted by this dress, and green can be really difficult. Green can be a challenge. It really can. And wow, that particular green, it reminded me, I've spoken before about Carolina Herrera and her sort of candy apple greens, those New York greens, juicy greens, that she really mixes in with these kind of juicy apple reds. And it reminded me of that sort of green. But you know what? That sort of gown is made for movement and is made for cinema. is made for CinemaScope, is made for the lights on it, because it goes from something really probably a little more drab in the flesh. I mean, totally beautiful, but more drab in reality. Drab's the wrong word, but flatter in reality. But when the lights are on that gown with its sort of taffeta confection, it scintillates, it's gauzy, and the green hues really shine bright and come to life. So it was wonderful to see her, particularly in movement. It took my breath away. I thought it was truly dazzling. I really did. It was a fantasy, an absolute fantasy, with the earrings, the emeralds that she had all loaned from Her Majesty. So stunning. And how she manages to churn out the looks on a daily basis, I'm sure she has her team behind her, but to look so flawless at all times, day after day after day, night after night, not many could do it as she does. That boy picked so good. And he looked so handsome on much of the trip. I loved him, especially when he was in the white jacket. His finery is with the trousers with the red stripe. Really sexy, really handsome. He's still not entirely comfortable in his role, I don't think. He'll always look a little ill at ease. I think he would rather be doing other things. And how many times they have to stand through God Save the Queen, bless them. So boring for them. But, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? He did us proud, of course, most of the time with his trademark aristocratic style, very sombre, muted wardrobe, blues, conservative colours, and nothing ever flashy or racy, which is, to be honest, how it should be. I rather like him in his velvet jackets here, there and everywhere, but he does the right thing. We saw her dancing there in that pretty blue frock, with the large earrings there, and that was a nice look for her. I love how she mixed up the more formal numbers with the more casual. The other moment of glamour was, of course, the rose pink gown. So beautiful, like a shimmering pinky waterfall, wasn't it? Beautiful colour on her. She personifies elegance, and that gown had a retro vibe to it as well, I thought, which was gorgeous. There was the white lace number with the tilted hat. Very classy, very classy. Always matches and pairs the accessories so gorgeously and perfectly. As with the coral and cream number, I don't know, would you call that coral? I couldn't really decide whether it was peach or coral, or tangerine. It was a sort of mixture of all three. But the coral and cream number with the white stilettos, very nice there, giving a lovely sort of mellow vibe, I thought. And then again we saw her in a more casual frock with the blue and the red and the yellow bits, which is lovely to see. And the crowds, so adoring of them, and the beauty of those Jamaican people. Really stunning. Beautiful crowds, giving them such a warm reception. Thank you to those of you in Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, wherever it is, that gave Catherine and William such a beautiful welcome. And bringing sunshine our way, we have our Primrose Princess shifting in the breeze here. Isn't she sunny and canary yellow? She wears it well. We also had a red and white number. A little different for Catherine there, quite a bold look, which I really enjoyed. It's got some 1960s references, I'd say, with that lovely updo there. Resplendent in Yves Saint Laurent she is. And just today treated to this beautiful vision in Eau de Nil. Stunning, with the perfect smile there in the splashy rain. How romantic. I thought these images were gorgeous. I love images under the rain. Gleeful, together with her fella with an umbrella. In the Bahamas, we got to see Catherine in that blue gown, would you call it a powder blue, I thought, almost a Tiffany blue, but not quite. Such a gorgeous cut. I love that cut. Really nice with the nude heels. And in Jamaica again, there was the green dress as she was departing Jamaica. That's right, with the hummingbird brooch. But of course, with a tour like this, any kind of visit in 2022, especially after the mood of the last few years, there's going to be the feeling of echoes of colonial rule, which is only natural after the last few years that it's in the forefront of everybody's mind. But I think it was right for William and Catherine to undertake the tour because Her Majesty is Queen of Jamaica, as it stands. And it's right that she send her representatives and possible future King of Jamaica to meet with the people and so much of the reparations that Jamaica, for example, might be seeking from Britain are business of the government, not so much business of the royals, or in particular William and Catherine, despite what other quarters might suggest. They're the business of government. But I do think it's worth mentioning, before we move on, the royal family and having the crown at the helm in places like Jamaica. It's not a dictatorship. Jamaica could have changed its constitution at any time. Her Majesty is not their head of state under duress or because they've been forced into it. In 1976, Trinidad moved away. They changed their constitution, but Jamaica chose not to. And in order to move forward, or backward, depending on how you see it, it is a referendum that would be required in Jamaica. It's not solely the government's decision, which is why there's a charm offensive from both sides to get people on board. And I'm actually very much in favour of referenda, and would be in this instance. I think it's a healthy thing to gauge the temperature of the nation, as long as the nation is well informed. So I just wanted to be clear on the fact that the Queen as head of state has been the will of the Jamaican people all these years. It's not the royal family that imposed themselves over the last few decades. It's been the will of the Jamaican people. And also being part of the Commonwealth, that's a voluntary club, totally voluntary. 54 nations are part of that club, but that is something that I would be loath to lose. I don't particularly care whether Jamaica or any other nation wants Her Majesty as their head of state anymore. It is what it is. If time marches on, so be it. But I think it would be a great shame to lose the kinship that is provided by throughout the Commonwealth realms. And you'll hear a lot about countries such as China, for example, wanting to disassemble the Commonwealth, because many of our nations, especially some of the smaller ones, form stronger units when they're together and are able to share information with each other. And I think it's really healthy to have those ties. Magnificent India, for example, is one of those 54 member states that is a voluntary member of the Commonwealth. And the Crown has no involvement with India whatsoever these days, thanks to Lord Mountbatten. Thank you. He gave back India. But of course, one of the reasons that Jamaica, for example, still has the Queen as head of state is simply the fact that her reign has gone on and on and on so very long, for 70 years. And it straddles, if that's not too much of a vulgar word, she straddles the old world into the new, doesn't she? I mean, it was a completely different world when she began her reign. And I do feel that long reign has been putting off the inevitable that might happen when King Charles ascends the throne. But we can only watch and find out, can't we? Because there seems to be a great bag of mixed reaction between the Jamaican people. They've all still grown up looking at William, Catherine, watching the royal family, so there is that familiarity there. They've certainly been charmed this week, despite what some of the news headlines might say. There's always going to be those who are in favour and those who are not. Prince William chose not to make an apology for slavery. He expressed his sorrow. I believe apologies should be the business of government, if of anybody at all. But I'm reluctant to have an opinion one way or the other on apologies and reparations. I believe that is for the people of Jamaica or any of these countries affected from the ghosts of racism and slavery in the past. I believe it's their business. But as I've said before, I do think that the British Empire at the moment is taking quite a beating from all quarters. And that's largely because, well, it was such a great empire, size-wise, but also because it was the most recent sort of official empire, if you like. And, I guess my problem's always been, if you're going to judge society from 200 years ago, 300 years ago, how far back are you going to go requesting apologies from various nations, With Jamaica, for example, England was not the first to colonize, because they took it from the Spanish. Spanish had already colonized Jamaica, and they already had slaves. Jamaica was first inhabited by a people known as the Red Ware and the Arawak tribes. This was around about the year 600. Jamaica was Jamaica with an X, meaning land of wood and water. But our good old friend Christopher Columbus arrived in the 1400s, 1490s, and the Spanish people enslaved the Arawaks. This was a long time before any English foot had set foot on that soil, as far as I'm aware, certainly not colonized by them. The Spanish enslaved the Arawak tribes, and because the Spanish people had brought with them foreign diseases that these people couldn't cope with, it was only about 200 years later that these tribes went almost totally extinct because of these Spanish colonizers and the diseases that they'd brought over with them. And it was the Spanish who transported hundreds of West African people, slaves, over to Jamaica. You know, I just want to put that in perspective for you. I shall also put in perspective that that was completely dwarfed by the vast number of hundreds of thousands of slaves that the British went on to bring over. So I acknowledge that and put that entirely in perspective. But that was because there was a change of industry. Jamaica's main source of income before the 18th century was piracy, actually. This was before sugar really took off, and the sugar cane. It was piracy, so not as many slaves were required. But in 1655 the English invaded, and of course we won, defeated the Spanish, of course. So it was England's time, and it was during that time that the sugar trade really took off, and it was very labour intensive, and it needed more workers. So, you know, tragically, that was when so many hundreds of thousands of slaves were shipped over. But, you know, I just wanted to bring to your attention that if the English hadn't invaded and the Spanish were still colonizing Jamaica at that time, and the sugar trade had taken off, do you think that they would have been reluctant to ship over so many slaves as well, because they'd already begun the process by shipping over hundreds of slaves before that? So I want to be clear that in no way am I trying to excuse the barbarism of slavery, because I'm not in any way, shape or form. The whole affair is so utterly ghastly and heartbreaking to think of, it truly is. But I am reluctant to judge societies and empires from hundreds of years ago. That doesn't mean that I don't think that some reckoning might be deserved in some quarters, in some ways, as long as it goes to the right people. But I do feel, just to redress the balance, I do feel that those arguments are being used to make a political point. Do you know what I mean? To make a political point, rather than one that is truly to try and absolve descendants of slavery from the sins of colonialism. I think there's a fine line that some tread. Some concerns are very genuine, some are purely political, and there's a spectrum all the way in between. So it's very multi-layered, very multi-textured. And this is my YouTube channel, so you often hear me prattling on with my opinion, but this is the sort of instance in which I ask for your views, especially if you are from the countries that we're talking about. There's no getting away from the fact they took some criticism for some of the optics of the tour. I think it's so much of a muchness, I'm not going to get into that. You know, if you're going to look through a cynical lens, then yes, it does appear, oh, we're the white saviours coming to shake hands with the rest of you and act very colonially. You know, anyone can take away what they will from those kind of optics. I think most people with a rational mind just see people coming together, celebrating each other, the warmth between Prince William and Catherine and everybody else there. I saw nothing but dignified behaviour from everybody involved and an understanding. I think it would take someone with a very cold heart from both sides to interpret any of the images we saw and see something controversial. And of course, much has been made about the fact that some opinions have been sullied by the behaviour of the Harkles, and I have no doubt about that whatsoever. And this is why their behaviour has really stung for so many of us. And you know what makes me really sad is that the two people who William loves the most, aside from his father, but possibly who he was closest to as he grew up, what really makes me sad is that these two people who he loved and cherished, Diana and Harry, and who he trusted, they are the ones, I'm afraid, regrettably, and I'm sure in Diana's case, it wasn't so intentional against her own son, perhaps against Charles, but certainly not against her own son, but she did it. You know, a lot of the anti-monarchy feeling or resentments sprout from the actions and behaviours of those two, of Diana and Harry. You know, and that must really sting for William, because weary is the head that wears the crown, and the last people you need adding to that great burden is your own mother and your own brother, who has also watched you grow up and seen what misery you're in and how trapped you are, as Harry says, how trapped you are, and still heap on. The controversy insinuating that the institution, the firm, are racist and bigoted, when we all know that they're not, allowing his wife to pull the institution into disrepute and try and turn it into some kind of tawdry chat show soap opera drama. Thank God he found Catherine. Thank God. You know, in many ways I believe that woman has been his saviour. You know, he has a woman by his side who is utterly beautiful, who he can trust implicitly, and will always be loyal and faithful to each other. Despite the rumours, will always be loyal and faithful to each other and have each other's backs. Whether prince or pauper, she loves him, and she doesn't just talk the talk about loving him to bits, as Harry does. She actually loves him with her actions and her regal behaviour. Because Harry can talk about how he loves Big Willie to bits all the time as much as he wants to, but his behaviour does not demonstrate love, I'm afraid. It truly does not. It demonstrates damage, wanton damage, reckless damage. And I'm sure many of you have read about Lisa Hanna, the former Miss World, who's now a politician with the People's National Party. She wants the country to become free from the monarchy. I'm sure some of you will have seen this clip that's gone viral of her apparently snubbing Catherine. She said in The Guardian today, "I did not snub Kate Middleton." She says, "Much fuss has been made of my supposed snub of the Duchess of Cambridge because of a 2-second manipulated clip taken out of context. I have nothing but respect for Catherine as a person, and I treated her with that respect and cordiality, as evidenced by many other photos and videos of our interaction. I do not have any quarrel with the Duchess herself, the people of the United Kingdom, or the government." And she went on to write quite a long piece, seemed quite reasoned in some ways. But this I did think was rather rude of her. She says towards the end, "Condemning slavery with no action, as both Prince Charles and Prince William did, is not particularly bold, nor does it show courage. I would hope that this rhetoric is a start and not an end to their journey on the issue of reparations and justice." So, yes, she accuses William and Charles of not being particularly bold and not showing courage because they didn't apologise. They've expressed sorry, but they didn't apologise. Well, I believe that it is the business of governments to apologise for this kind of thing, if it's to be anybody at all, not the royal family. And while I recognise that there will be some out there who feels that as a representative of the royal family, maybe it should fall to William to make an apology, but I also think that there are many out there who understand that William has no business apologising for the behaviours of either his ancestors or his nation, his country, from not just decades ago, but centuries ago, from the age of empires. But I remain open-minded on the subject. I remain able to be convinced either way, shall we say, or maybe be able to take a broad overview of all opinions on that subject. I mean, what do you think? There are those who are convinced that yes, she did, she was making a point, she snubbed Catherine. Some who say it's a nonsense on stilts. My own personal feeling, well, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt in that instance. I have seen so many clips over the months and years of whether it be Catherine, William, Meghan, Harry, where people fabricate a story to go with a little glance here, a little nod there, and I find it all a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. Might be my naivety, could have been totally plotted and formulated and concocted by Lisa Hanna, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt there. I think it was probably just a chance moment that's been pounced upon by the press, but who knows. So whatever the future holds for these realms overseas and our relationship to them and their relationship to the Crown, whatever happens, in my eyes, this trip was a success simply because Catherine and William could not have done us any more proud than they did, could not have put on a show with more grace, dignity, fun, and poise. My heart is full and overflowing when I watch the interactions, the way that they bring people together, bring a sense of occasion, celebration, some of tradition and duty, and do it with such aplomb and finesse, and with a sense of humility too. Very royal. And, I was going to say it's quite a sadness that the Harkles couldn't have just sucked it up, kept their egos in check, and hung around so that they could be these great ambassadors for the Commonwealth, and so that Miss Markle could have brought her own twist to royalty by being A, American, and B, biracial. But with her attitude as it is, and Harry's, perhaps they would always have been loose cannons, and maybe they wouldn't have been able to help themselves, taking it upon themselves to apologise for things when really they're way down the line in representation for the Queen, and it's not their place to comment on such things. So they wouldn't have enjoyed having to keep their mouth shut and toe the line. Lovely to see you all for a little catch-up, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to those who have sent me a little tip in the tip jar, and I'll catch you on the next broadcast. Toodle pip!